Okay, so I asked Steve to talk about what he's doing because he's doing such a great job on hanging these hammers on all 5 of the hallmarks of a good hammer hanging job. Okay, so the first one is that all of your catchers are in a straight line. You can see how he has them clamped, zip tied. He's got a straight edge here and then a straight edge underneath. You can't see it, but there is a straight edge underneath the catchers, and then he's got them zip tied in 3 places so that all the catchers are clamped together, all in a perfectly straight line. Okay, and that tells you that the angle that the shank goes in the hammer butt is all even. You want it at 90 degrees. If it's whatever, anyway, that gives you a straight catcher line. The second one is there's probably even more than 5, but the second one is the drilling, how you drill it, or the boring, which gives you a straight line here at the back of the hammers. So that's what he was just talking about there. The next one is that you have this angle. So this is in order, by the way. This angle here at the top of the felt, and that tells you that how you shank the hammers is correct. That angle is correct, right? So that as long as you shank them correctly, then you get this angle also correct. And then the 5th one would be this one here, which gives you your height when you actually put them in, right? Okay, so that's all in order of each step as you go. And then you could even take it a little further and see that all of them are centered on the strings and they're all equally spaced. Now there are some little discrepancies here, but that's okay because he's just going to go in, and this type of flange will be easy because it's the screw kind, not the brass flange kind. So it'll be easy to just kind of make minor adjustments one way or the other. And so that'll come after. If it is a brass flange, we can just use that shank burner tool that'll kind of move things over. Okay. So this is a factory job right here. So that's what we want, is we want factory work. Yeah. And for those of you that maybe have worked on some pianos, I'm sure McKinley has, maybe you've seen some in the field where hammers have been replaced by a technician who maybe does one, didn't know the Steve method, right? You can tell that there are issues all over the place, right? You have issues with angles, you have issues with catcher angles, you have spacing issues, you have issues with up and down. There are issues all over the place. So, and I'm sure McKinley, I'm sure you've seen those, and so you know, I don't want to throw people, other companies or other technicians under the bus. They're just not doing the same volume that we're doing, right? We're doing 100 a year, and a lot of these places they're doing 1 a year, if that. It's just like, honey, we got a rebuild job. Clear the garage for the next couple months, you know. And so they're not really set up for this kind of production work, and quality definitely suffers when that's the case. Anyway, good job, Steve. Keep it up.
All right. So when you're hanging hammers, there are 3 planes that you need to make sure are all straight with each other. There's this one, which is the back and top of the hammers, and then there's this one, which is the actual back of them that has to be straight. And then the hardest one for me is the actual felt hammers in the front. And so a perfect hanging is all 3 are perfectly straight, and when you have a straight edge like this, you can tell pretty easy. But my method usually getting them straight in the back is also really hard, and being able to do that, my method for that, I'm going to be coming over here. My method for that is that when you put these into this jig right here, some of these, even though they're, you know, the actual hammer butt is to the back of this right here, some of the actual hammer shanks may be a little higher or a little lower than the rest.
You're talking about the angle right now.
Yeah, the angle of the bottom of the hammer shank.
But I mean, you're talking about the angle of how to get this straight up
Sure.
here on
Yeah.
the top of the felt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously when you put these in, you have to make sure that the top of the felt is touching this part of the jig, and the bottom of the actual hammer is touching the bottom here. And even when that is perfect, sometimes the bottom of the hammer shanks can be a little bit off, and that is what messes up the angle of the front part of the hammer, the felt.
So just to demonstrate, sometimes you can push that in further,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just gently kind of resting it on top.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So it's good to keep an eye on both angles here, both connections, as well as making sure that these are all completely straight with each other. And that saved me a lot on a lot of the different pianos, getting them right. But my method differs from everybody else's method in that with my method you only have to regulate the lengths of two hammers rather than the lengths of every single one. And the way to do that is you get the two ends, and this one is a better example. But you get the two ends and you regulate the length of both ends, and the other one is not here right now, but you regulate the length of both ends according to the length of the 88th note, which is the most important to get that length perfect. But you make sure that all the section ends are exactly the same height and length as that, so you only regulate 6 in the entire piano. And then for the rest of the hammers in the section, you cut them. It doesn't really matter the specific length. I always cut them about that much in size difference from the section ends. But you cut them a little bit shorter than the rest. And so what I do, if you come over here, so again, the section ends are according to the length of the 88th note, but you put the section ends in. These are not the right section ends, but just pretend they are. And then when you have that, you use a straight edge, and this is kind of a big one, but I call it a bubble level. I'm not sure if that's its actual name. And then you get it 100% completely even with the ground. And this one could use a little bit of work, but once you have that and the two section ends are perfect with each other, then come back over. Then you get, the next one over, and you put it in, and it will be significantly lower than both the section ends. And so to fix that, you put the straight edge over, and it will only be touching the section ends, obviously. And once you glue it, you just pull it up and adjust it accordingly. And usually, as with any hammer hanging, you put 2 pieces of wood underneath and above the catchers. I'm not sure if that's their actual name.
Yeah,
catchers, right. And then you push it all the way up so that they're actually touching the piano. And when you have the section ends in, it's easy to see the appropriate length for that. And then once they're all straight up, every single time you put a new hammer in, you put it in, you lift it according to the straight edge, and then you hold it there for a minute, and then it'll dry in that position. And then I always work from the sides and move in. And after every single hammer, you just check with the straight edge every single time and make sure that they're right.
And you have to use quick and thick for this to work.
Yeah, quick and thick glue. And
what happens if you don't use quick and thick?
If you don't use quick and thick, I found that it just takes a long time.
It takes a long time to dry.
Yeah, it
Have you
takes.
used another glue?
What's that?
Have you used any other?
I tried the wood glue for this new method at one point, and it wasn't good. But with any other type of glue, you would just be sitting there holding the hammers up to the actual straight edge for a long time, because you need to just sit there and hold it like this until it dries. And with any other glue, it'll just keep sinking down, and you have to keep pulling it back up. And then obviously you knurl the edges so that you get it a little smaller. And once you have that, once it's pulled up, it's usually pretty malleable, and you can just move it into position. But I've found that this method is a lot faster, because you only have to actually regulate the size of 2 hammers, and the rest you can just pull up to length. So I think that's it.
Okay, talk about how you get this plane here straight. That one.
Oh. Yeah, so with
We do have a lot of pianos that are where some of the hammers are slightly back or slightly forward.
yeah, that's an issue on this one a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah, in order to get this plane in the back straight, the issue with that is, oh well, I guess that's for the actual drilling, right? Yeah. Okay, so I would need a hammer pair and then the little jig that I made for that as well. All right, so to get all the backs to the same length, get these out of the way. What I do is you get the actual old hammer right here, and then you get its counterpart, which would be this one, and then you measure them against one another. But because this is the old one, it's been worn down a little bit in the front. So with the new one, you pull it forward just a little bit, and I pull it forward about that much, because this one looks like it would go about that same length if it hadn't been pushed in just through years of use on the piano. And so once you have that length perfect, then you would get a pencil and mark right here on this side the exact center of the shank and where it is. So that would be right here on this one. And then you do that with the other section end, which normally I would do that with this, but just for sake of doing it quickly, you just make sure that the backs are even with one another, and then you mark it right there. So these are the 2 section ends, and they are both exactly the same length with one another. So it's 31. Okay. So then, that was wrong.
Are you explaining how to prep before you drill your holes?
Yeah, how to drill them all completely straight. So I'm just going to mark this one because it's the actual section end. Okay. So then you put them all next to each other on a flat surface like this, and then you put them in a jig, which is just 2 straight edges next to each other, and then you tighten them with clamps. Then once you have them like that, I get another straight edge, put it underneath. What's that? Put it underneath, and then you find the 2 marks that I made, which if you look over, you can see them, and put the straight edge right.
Where are they?
One is right there.
Okay.
And you put this on the first mark, then you look over at the second mark and match it there. And then once you have that, you just hold the straight edge in place and then make a single line right over. Because the jig that we have for drilling, sometimes it slips back. So some of the ones, halfway through might be a little bit longer or just out of place. So if you have the line, which is exactly precise on every single one, you always have that as a reference for when you're drilling. Yeah. So if you have that, then you can drill exactly in the middle of the line for every single one, and the backs are always even with each other when you put them in the piano.
So you still use the jig,
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you're just watching to make sure that the bit goes right into the center of the line.
Yeah, so you still use the jig that's on the drill, but with the line you have that as reference to make sure that it didn't slip back or anything. So use the jig in the drill, but always make sure that where you're drilling is in the middle of the line so that it just works as insurance in that way.
I've taken the extra step of I actually measure the middle and make a mark so I have a cross.
Okay.
And then I actually use just an awl and I do a tiny little tap of the awl so that when you use the brad point,
Mhm.
it sticks right in that hole and it's not going anywhere else.
Okay.
So it's helped me to.
Does everybody know what a brad point bit is? Yeah, those are good. So the usual twist bit, right? It just kind of has like a 15-degree angle that it drills in at. Whereas the brad point, it just has a little pokey thing at the very center, so it centers the bit.
Yeah.
That's it.
But that should be it for the drill hole regulation and everything else I mentioned earlier. So, yeah.